Everybody hear me?
Yeah, we
I
can
can hear you.
Okay.
Down in the bottom left corner, you can click on the deal that says share video, and then we can see what you look like.
Oh yeah, hang on here. Oh, they moved it to the top. There we go. Start video.
There you go.
All right.
Oh no, I can't see what I look like though, so I can't see how we're. Let's see if I can find me on. There we go.
You're on
Let me
there.
adjust my camera just a little bit. Get my good side there. Yeah, well, there ain't no such thing as a good side anymore. So, okay. Yeah, like I said, this is my first Zoom meeting, so it's kind of awkward talking to the computer instead of the people.
Yeah, I know. It kind of feels like you're talking to a wall sometimes.
Yeah. So Michael asked me to talk, and I was like, sure. What do you want me to talk about? You got to give me something specific. And he said he wanted me to talk about my journey with Russian bees. Well, I don't know if we got enough time for that, but I actually haven't done a talk in a few years. So I went back through my PowerPoints and tried to find. I didn't really have anything to address that. But I've got some slides that kind of talk about the development of the Russian bee program. But before we get to that, my dad started with bees 67. I was like 2 years old. He started as a hobby. He lived in Memphis, Tennessee, and over the next couple of years, him and his dad grew it into a 400 hive sideline operation. And when I was about 13 years old, we quit. He quit working for Sears and Roebuck in Memphis and moved to Northeast Arkansas and started keeping bees full time. And so I kind of grew up in the bee business as a little kid, working on the weekends and holidays, helping my grandfather and my dad. And as a teenager, doing it, all summer during the summer. So I've kind of been around it most of my life. And around 95, 96, we started hearing about Russian bees from a beekeeper friend of my dad's. Got to find out more about them. And in 2000, we bought our first breeder queen. And we started keeping Russian bees and went fully Russian bees since then. And it's because of varroa mites. They're resistant to varroa mites. Jan, in your overview of mites a while ago, they've learned a lot about them in the last 20 years. They know they feed on fat bodies now, and they transmit viruses. And when Russian bees were being developed, viruses weren't an issue. So that kind of makes things a little bit more complicated keeping bees now, because even though you got your varroa mites under control, you can still suffer from colony collapse or whatever they want to call it nowadays because of the viruses. I don't know how many people know about it, but we wrote a book. Tom Render and I wrote a book, Russian Honeybees. It's on Amazon, or you can order it from me. If you email me, we'll send it to you. It's $39.50 plus shipping. Shipping's like $4 or something. If you want to put together a club order, we can get you a little discount on that. If you wanted to get with me about that, Jan.
Okay.
Put together several orders, several books. I could ship them out at once. But it describes part of what I'm going to talk about tonight, and it has a lot of details about the Russian bees, where they came from, why they're resistant. It's not technical. There's some big words in it that I have trouble saying, like vitellogenin, whatever. I can't even say that word either. We don't really talk about that in there, but there's a lot of, it's all research based. Tom Render went back over the 25 years worth of research that he and the researchers at the Baton Rouge lab conducted, and kind of dumbed it down. I helped him dumb it down. I was like, Tom, I don't understand what this means. Let's say it this way. So we kind of dumbed it down so you don't have to be a scientist to understand what's going on. But if you do want to dig into the science, all of the papers are in there at the back of each chapter, so you can do that. So it's the first resource on Russian honeybees, and it was written by Tom Render, the researcher that developed them, and myself. So I would encourage you to get to buy that. You can get it off Amazon, or you can get it off me. Okay. So that's enough for the commercials for tonight. Russian bees are resistant to Varroa, and they're resistant to Varroa because, let's see, I haven't looked at this. Let me get this working. There we go. So that's me. Oh, yeah. So I grew up here in Northeast Arkansas, and we ran from 800 hives to 2,000 hives to 10,000 hives. And by the time we had 10,000 hives, we were covering a good bit of Northeast Arkansas. And then in 1994, I moved down here to South Mississippi, where I am now. And in 2014, I started my own operation. And I run bees right here along the coast, and I go right up here, right about in this area of the state to make a little bit of cotton and soybean honey. So that's where I run my bees now. So why Russian bees? Well, we know it's because of the varroa mite. They are also resistant to other pests. There's no scientific proof that they're resistant to American foul brood, but I have not treated for foul brood in over 10 years, and I've been using Russian bees over 10 years. Since I've been using Russian bees, I've never treated for foul brood, except for that one year when a guy from Arkansas sent some bees down. My dad was trying to help him out, and we split his bees. And of course, the way that they were right close to one of our bee yards, and then by the time I got ready to send them home, the bee inspector came to inspect them, and I had to treat them 3 times with Tylosin to get them cleaned up enough to get them out of the state, which his weren't Russian honeybees. But they're basically, American foul brood is not an issue. Small hive beetles, I don't know how much trouble y'all have with small hive beetles. Probably not as much as I do, because I'm a lot wetter. I think we get somewhere around 66 to 68 inches of rain annually. That's the average. Last year we had over 100 inches in some parts of the county. So small hive beetles can be a problem, but Russian bees will have fewer small hive beetles in Italian colonies. Tracheal mites, that's really not an issue. Not much of an issue with anyone anymore, but it's not an issue with Russian bees either. Nosema, it's difficult to predict the levels, but there's been some evidence that there's some genetic resistance, but Nosema is just all over the map, so who really knows? Where did Russian bees come from? Well, they came from the Primorsky territory of Russia. In the 1800s, when the United States was colonizing the West, Russia was colonizing the East, and when they built their Trans-Siberian Railroad, I don't know exactly where it went, but it went somewhere across like this way. Anyway, by the time they got that thing finished, they loaded people on the trains and sent them east to colonize the area, and they took their bees with them. And as you can see here, Apis cerana is the natural host to varroa mite, and they lived in this area. And so immediately their European bees came in contact with the varroa mite. And so over the past 150 years, those beekeepers learned, they learned how to deal with varroa, and the only thing they had, basically all they did was graft breed from the survivors. And so that's why they had, even in 1994, they didn't have the money or the ability to use any kind of, very few mite treatments on there. So most of it was all through natural or man's selection. So this is a picture of Tom Render down here in the bottom right, many years ago. And he went to Russia with, I forget, the book talks a little bit about how he made that work, but they went to Russia 6 different they didn't go 6 different times, I don't believe, but they imported 6 different sets of queens for a total of 360 queens in the United States over between 97 and 2002. And they selected and based mostly on Varroa numbers, and then on honey production, gentleness, and all the other aspects that you need for a good bee. But the number one was Varroa mites, and they ended up with the Russian honeybees. Yeah, so some of this is kind of, they quarantined them on a station on an island in South Louisiana. So here's the most important part about this one. So when we talk about mite resistance, we don't really talk, we're not really concerned with how many mites does your colony have today? Because that's kind of an arbitrary number. The mite population, most of the mites are underneath the caps. So when you do a mite sample, you're only sampling at most a third, 30% or so of the mites. And depending on how your brood cycles are going, especially with Russian bees, if you experiencing a dearth, then the Russian queens can stop laying, and then your brood population will fluctuate up and down. And so if you have less brood, then you're going to have more mites. And so once you sample today and you have 2 frames of brood, and whereas 3 weeks ago you had 5 frames of brood, you're going to have a higher mite count. So the point is mite growth over time, and that's how we define resistance. Is we sample mites typically early in the spring, and then we wait. You need to wait at least 90 days, but if you can do 120, if you do 4 months, or if you can do a year, that's fine too. But you want the hive to be able to go through several brood cycles, and then you sample the mites at the end, and the difference between those is your mite population growth. And so it's the mites over time that we're really concerned about. So you can kind of, here's some examples of that. This individual hive number 4 started out with a 1% infestation. It ended with a 4% infestation. So it had a mite growth of 3%. You look here at hive number 25, it started with the same 1%, but it only ended with 1.24%. So you had a 0.24% infestation. So that's not bad. That's really pretty good. Basically, that's 0, a flat mite growth. But here's what we really like to see is these that started with 3% and was down to slightly over 2.5%. So we had a reduction in mite growth over time. And that's really what we're after as breeders. As for selecting breeders, we're after something that has a 0 or a negative mite growth over time. See, I should have gone through my slides a little better. So here's some of the bee locations, bee mating yards that they had during the selection process. And once they quarantined them, they selected them for low mite population growth. They evaluated for general traits, and then they selected their daughters and grafted off those. And they put them out in beekeepers' test yards in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Iowa to kind of get a comparison over, Northeast Iowa's climate and timing is a whole lot different than Louisiana's. So that's how they were evaluating them. Let's see. So we use a closed breeding program, and they brought in 300 queens, and they selected them down to 18 queens, and they designated those 18 queens as the lines, family lines for the Russian bees, and they separated them into 3 blocks, A, B, and C. And we always mate block B, so queens from B always mate with blocks A and C, and vice versa. That way we control, or we eliminate problems with inbreeding. And so when you buy queens or nukes from a producer, as long as you keep up with what year you purchased those, it doesn't matter what the blocks are or what I can't remember if I'm A, B, or C. I know my color, that we were color coded. I know my color, but I can't remember which one I am. It doesn't matter for you because you just keep up with what you bought in 2020 and know that if you buy queens in 2021 or buy nukes in 2021, you can graft or use either one. You can breed those back to each other, make those to each other. And then once you get 3 years in a row, you just need to make sure that you mate 1 year with the other 2 years. So you don't have to worry about inbreeding issues if you do that. Let's see that. Yeah, like I said, they got down to 18 lines and created the Russian breeding program. So I guess I kind of jumped ahead. What prompted me to get into the program? Well, my dad realized that treating Varroa with a miticide was not going to work. I can't remember the year. I don't know how many of y'all know about Coumaphos, the check mite strips. That was going to save the industry, and it lasted 2 years. And then all of a sudden, the Varroa became resistant to the Coumaphos. It wouldn't kill Varroa, and then we figured out it sterilized your drones. So that savior of the industry turned out to be one of the worst things that we ever did to beekeepers, because we really hurt our whole industry for a couple of years, because not everybody realized that they were causing damage to the drones, and you end up with a lot of bad queens, and if you didn't realize, and then stuff stays in your comb. So my dad knew that the pesticide treadmill was not a good thing to get on, and he realized, at least he believed, that the Russian bees were going to be a genetic solution to use an insecticide, or varroicides is what they are. And so we were trying them out, and like I said, we were in Northeast Arkansas, which has a little bit different winter. You're north of Texas, so y'all know those winter ice storms that come through ever so often. Well, we get those in Northeast Arkansas, and it gets a little colder. And one year it got cold and wet, and we couldn't get around to feed this particular yard. We actually forgot about it. I probably forgot about it, and we didn't feed it. We pulled the honey in probably in October or early November, and we never went back to feed it. And then it got too wet, and we couldn't get to it until February. And when we got back to February, there were something like 54 of the 56 hives were still alive. And we had some Italian hives that year that most of those starved to death because we couldn't get around to feed them fast enough. And so that's when we decided to go with Russian honeybees, because they had proven that they'll survive, and we had seen proof that they were resistant to varroa mites. So I don't usually work bees without a veil. You should always work bees with a veil and a smoker and a hive tool. If you forget your smoker, I don't care. Turn around and drive back the 30 minutes to your house and get your smoker, or go to your neighbor's house and borrow their smoker. But I saw a post on Facebook the other day where some guy was complaining because he got stung 15 or 20 times because he couldn't keep his smoker lit. Well, that's a challenge for new beekeepers. I understand, but you need to learn to light that smoker and use it, because it not only will help you have a more enjoyable experience, but it'll help protect your location from wandering neighbors or nosy neighbors. If your bees are all agitated when you leave because you didn't use a smoker and stings one of them, then you can lose a location. And sometimes that location could even be your own backyard. So there was some definite collusion in the Russian bee program, but not anything nefarious. This is from 2015. This is the members of the association. We have annual meetings, but not this year. We're going to do a Zoom meeting, so we'll see how that goes. We're 13 or 14. I think we got a couple new guys now. We're just independent beekeepers who join together to maintain the Russian stock and improve its commercial value for honey production and disease resistance as well. So, we're doing our own thing most of the time, like beekeepers like to do, but we do work together to select and provide good stock. And you should only buy stuff from certified members, because anybody and a brother can get Russian queens and they can graft off of them, and they call them Russian queens. And while they may or may not be, the only way to have any kind of certainty of what you're buying is if you buy from a certified member. And the certified member is a person who has proven that they can produce stock which maintains resistance to Varroa and passes the genetic stock test, as well as being evaluated for other bee pests. And we've got, and so we have these stickers, or have this kind of seal that they're supposed to go on all the nukes and queens. I don't stick them on all mine because I forget a lot of times, but if you ask for one, I'll put one on there for you. Have I been talking 30 minutes already? Okay.
Didn't pay attention.
Yeah, so we'll go through some of the, we have to maintain a minimum of 30 colonies for each of our lines. I try to do at least double that. And those are never treated for Varroa. And we measure their honey production and we measure the growth rate. So I'll take a sample in usually April or early May, and then I collect another sample September, October. Or some years I wait till the next year. It just depends on how busy I am at the time. But we get at least 4 months of time in between samples, so we have a good idea of how fast the mite population grows or doesn't grow. And then all the members swap queens with each other, with the other certified members, so that we have good drone sources to maintain our breeding program. So again, we're selected for Varroa resistance, mite population growth over time, honey production, and then other traits, temperament, color, chalk brood, resistance, etc. We just want good general bees. So here's some old data from 9, 10, and 11. These were all in the same locations, and you can see how much honey production varied. This bar here is the average for the yard. We probably got the bees late there that year, or what's going on. 09 wasn't a great year, so the orange line only averaged 32 pounds. The blue line averaged 48 pounds. But see, in 2010, it was reversed. The orange line averaged almost 100 pounds, and the blue line averaged 75 or 80. And so the way I would do that, so these are the top, I believe these are the top 10 producers. So I take the average, and then anything over the average production for that yard is considered good honey producer. And depending on how many I've got, if I've got 60 hives, I'll just take the top 10, and then I'll check the mite growth over time for those and pick the breeders out of those. So here's my mating yard set up. I have a 6 5/8 box divided into 3 sections, or I have some that are 4-frame nukes, and we have them on stands and just kind of scattered about. The perfect selection, let me get this, my pictures of my beautiful face are over on this side of my screen. Covers up some of my text. All right, so if you get everything perfect, you'd have 1 healthy colony could supply enough drones for 20 mating nukes. So you would need a minimum of 24 hives if you were going to mate 480 nukes, because you need 30 to 40 drones for each queen. And that's so that 10 of them can get lost, because they will get lost. 10 of them are for the birds, and that leaves you about 10 or 15 or so drones for the queen to mate with. And if you had an ideal situation, you would set your mating yard here, and you'd have drone sources right there in the yard with them. I don't care what people say on Facebook. Queens do not know that their brothers live in this hive right here 50 feet from them. They don't care. They all go to the same congregation area. And then at a half a mile, you want some more bees. And then at 3 miles out, you want more bees, so that you flood the area with drones, because drone saturation is the key. And so these are actually some of my old yards. We moved out of here, but this was a mating yard, and I had some drone yards here within a half a mile, and I had some drone yards here within about 3/4 of a mile over there. So I'll say this again: if you've got queens and drone and other colonies in this spot right here, they're going to fly to their drone congregation area. They have no ability to know that the hive right next to them has drones. They don't fly way over here, and drones fly from way over here. Here's the way I think about it. College, of course, this is a little different year for college students, but on the first day of college class, no one gets up in front of all the college students and tells them, hey, the bars are over on Market Street, 3 streets over. But the girls and the guys, independent of each other and independent of any help from any teachers, they figure out on their own where the bars are, so they get together on their own. They don't need any help. And they're not going to drive by 3 bars to go to another one. And they're going to stop at the first one they come to, pretty much. They're not driving across to the other next town over to go to the bar when there's some right there with them. So I think you get the point. So what we breed from, probability test, I talked about that. We make sure that the bees are Russian. Now we don't have a test that says it's 80% Russian or it's 20% Russian, but it tells us that it is 92% probability that it is pure Russian. And so this, I forget how many of this are here, about 15 or 20, but we grafted off everything that was above 90%, except we had a couple right here that were in the 85, 87% range. So it's rare to get something that's 100% pure Russian because of the way the test works. I don't understand it. It's all Greek to me, but the cutoff is like 70%. So we might have some queens that test at 75%, but if you've got one that tests at 85 or 90, then we select the ones that test higher, so that we have a higher probability of continuing the Russian genetics. So here's I got my slides out of order. So we have a quote unquote unknown. We don't know what the stock is. We're testing that. And so we're trying to determine, is it Russian or is it non-Russian, basically Italian. And so the test tells us that it's 80%. We're 80% sure that it is Russian. So sometimes it makes you feel this way when you're doing this kind of stuff. Okay. I don't know. So if you buy queens from an individual breeder, if you're buying queens, if you're buying nukes from me, there's variation in all honeybees. And all these, for instance here, each one of these bars represents an individual queen. So this queen tested 72%, had a probability of 72. These were in the 95% range. So that just means that you're going to get some range of variability. It doesn't mean that this bee is any less quality of a queen than this one. It just, the test came up that it's not as high. It's still Russian. It's just didn't check all the boxes. It just checked most of the boxes. Drones are important. Drones are fragile. They don't live very long, and they often carry sterile sperm, and that's why you need at least 30 per queen. So you got to saturate the area with drones. Drone congregation areas, it's usually the same location every year. Mating usually occurs between 2 and 5. And like I said, the college girls always find the college guys, or vice versa. And I don't really understand what makes them the drones. That is, I get the college kids, but I don't understand why they pick where they pick. But I don't have to. They got that all figured out. Flight activities of drones. See, the flight activities is highest between 2 and 5. Oh, how do the queens find them? Who knows? But they don't fly real far. Let's see how far. Oh, here, let me move my little thing out of the way so I can help me remember what we got going here. So this is why I say drone congregation areas are not, queens don't fly 3 miles in that direction over there, so they don't mate with drones from the same yard. It's because queens fly at about 15 miles an hour, and they did radio tag on queens, and they measured how long they were gone and how often they were gone. And if your total flight time was 6 minutes and you fly 15 miles an hour, you can only go like 3/4 of a mile in a round trip. If your total flight time is 15 minutes, you can only go, your max round trip is going to be 1.8 miles. So, and they measured how long the queens were out. This queen was out for 7 minutes. This queen was out for 15 minutes. This queen was out for almost 25 minutes. So this queen, she went at queen 1. So queen 4, she flew on when she was 3 days old, and then she didn't fly again until she was 10 days old. And then she flew again when she was 11 days old and was out for, I forget, I guess for 12 minutes. Yeah. So they're not out long enough. Now, they don't fly any further than they have to. So that's the point there. Okay, so that's pretty much, I just got some random, I don't want to go into that because I was picking on another club, but because they were wanting, I'll tell you. So this is in California, and they didn't want to buy any of my queens because they wanted to select their own queens, this locally adapted stock stuff, and they were taking it to the extreme. They were buying packages from Southern California, and then they wanted to select for their own locally adapted stock. And this is this is a city. Look how many houses there are. How many people live within a mile of you that have bees? So breeding bees is a challenge. Even when you supposedly know what you're doing. But anyway, Russian bees, you should be able to manage your bees and not your mites with Russian honeybees. And I know several of y'all have had them the last couple of years. They may not be the most gentle, calmest bee always, but compared to aggressive bees, they're not aggressive. And if you got questions, you can call me or email me, and I might not get right back to you, but I'll eventually get back to you. So I guess if I got time, I can answer some questions maybe.
Stephen, it sounds like your record keeping must be phenomenal.
Oh, it's pathetic.
And the queens.
Yeah, my record keeping is pathetic. It's yeah, I have help. My wife helps me keep up with that. When it comes to raising queens, you have to do what has to be done when it has to be done. It doesn't matter if it's hot or cold or rainy or whatever. So yeah, you got to have good records.
Well, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Do Russian bees have a tendency to create more aborted queen cells?
They almost always have cups in there. You might find the little queen cups, and sometimes there'll be an egg in there and sometimes not. It's not uncommon to have queens in there, queen cells with queens in there, but a lot of times they'll cut them down before the queen ever emerges. So that's not as prevalent as it used to be. When they first brought them over, that was a pretty prevalent thing, but we inadvertently bred that out of them.
Oh, we got several, packages from, well, not packages, but nukes from you last year.
Mm-hmm.
And we noticed that this year, there in some of the hives, they would create a whole bunch of queen cells, but they were dead queens. The queens in the cells were not viable a lot of times.
Well, that's not usually, that's a little bit odd. Usually there'll be live queens in there, and they'll either the bees or the queen will cut them down, cut a hole in the side, sting the queen, kill her. So I'm not really sure what's going on with dead queens. Like I said earlier, when they first started looking at this, they were looking around the world thinking about where can we find bees that have been exposed to varroa mites for a long enough period of time that natural selection has kind of taken over. And Tom talks about it in the book a little bit, but they figured out that, hey, in Russia, that has happened. But, that was in 1992, 1994, when they first went over there. There's a whole lot has changed in the last 25 years with farming practices and the chemicals. And I don't really want to get into all that, but there's so many other factors that influence the health of a hive now than just varroa mites, that it's just hard to say what's going on.
I've been happy with the fact that they're gentle. They're a gentle bee. But we did, and it's weird because it was in the hives that my daughter has that they ended up, a lot of times they create queen cells. And whenever I see queen cells on a frame, a lot of times I go, ooh, it's an opportunity to make a nuke. And we'd pull them out and put them into a nuke, but then the queens would never emerge.
Oh, okay.
So that's what we were finding. But then we had some other ones that she pulled out thinking they were, not viable queen cells, and opened them up and little queens came running out.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I really don't know.
I just wondered if you'd ran across that before.
Yeah, not dead queens in the cells. No, not really. So.
Okay.
Hey, Stephen. Mike Barber. I had the pleasure of unpacking a lot of your nukes and seeing a lot of your queens this year. And when you were going through your slides, I noticed one of the criteria was color. What is the ideal color selection for a Russian queen?
Well, that's up to each individual member. As part of as being a member, like I said, we're all running our own operation, and so whatever you want as the breeder is what you pick. While the lighter colored queens are a lot easier to spot, they don't tend to live as long. As a general rule, I mean, if you've been around beekeeping enough, if you could sample beekeepers' bees and see which ones are doing good, there's not very many of those really golden colored Italians left anymore. And there are some, and there's a good color variation. There's quite a bit of color variation in Russian bees, but I personally like the ones that are dark stripes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my personal preference. Well, it does make them, and I don't I don't spend a whole lot of time focusing on color. It's not a big thing to me, but there are other guys in the association that do. So.
Yeah, I'm sure that was kind of a random question, but it's been interesting seeing it, and that just kind of stood out. Thank you.
Yep.
Stephen.
Anybody else got questions?
Yes, I've got a question. Stephen, what has there ever been any, what is the mechanism that the Russian queens have, or the Russian bees?
Oh, yeah, see,
I know about BSH, and
yeah,
they talk about the aloe grooming and things. So what is it? Got to read the book.
I got to read the book. Now, you don't have to read the book, but it's in the book, and I did skip over that because there weren't any slides from that. Let's see, where is that? There's about 12 or 14 different mechanisms. Let's see if I can find it here. Hang on. There's a list of it. It's on the page. Oh, here we go. It's on page 76. So, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 10 that are pretty well established through research, and the varroa sensitive hygiene is one of them. So maybe you don't. They developed the VSHB at the Baton Rouge lab, basically the same time frame as they did the Russian honeybees. There's different researchers there working on that, and so every year they compared VSH and Russian bees together in their research. And anytime they sampled Russian honeybees, the VSH was equal to or greater than the VSH bees. So if you buy VSH queens now, anything you get now that's VSH, Russian bees are going to be basically the same because they have that in them. That's one of the traits. Grooming, so they groom each other better. They spend more time grooming each other than Italian bees do. Italian bees, they don't care how nasty their buddy is. They don't care. But the Russian girls, they like clean friends. There's suppression of varroa growth rate. So that's the key. The Russian bees keep the mite numbers low. So it doesn't matter what your type of bee is. If you can get your mite numbers low at the beginning of the season, and by low, like 1% or less, and then if you can keep your mite numbers low, below 3% up until this time of year, you won't have a problem. Now, with Italian bees, the only way to keep that low is with miticides. But Russian bees are able to keep that low from the combination of all their different traits. Reduce mite reproduction. So in the cells, when the female mite goes into the cell, something about Russian bees inhibit her ability to lay eggs successfully. So that it reduces the reproduction rate. There's an extended phoretic period, so the mites spend longer on the adult bees outside the caps outside, so which means they spend less time reproducing. Did you get that? I see a funny look on your face.
Oh yes, that's an interesting thing. I wonder how they manage that. I'm sure they figured it out.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there's lower proportions of brood infested. So when you just measure the numbers of individual brood with mites compared to Italians, there's going to be fewer mites in Russian brood than there are in Italian brood. So if you have fewer females laying eggs, you're going to have a lower rate of growth. And so the most unique thing is combs. So they took comb built by Russian bees, and they put the comb over in an Italian colony, and they took Italian comb and put it over in a Russian colony, and the Russian built comb had fewer mites in it even in the Italian colony. And the Italian built comb had more mites than the Russian did in the Russian colony. So they didn't really figure out why, but the something about it's either some kind of pheromone or some sort of something that messes with the varroa mite's ability to detect pheromones or lay eggs or who knows. But it's spelled out in a lot more detail in the book. And then they reference all of the research papers. And if you really want to dig into it, you can find the research papers and read those. So
Very interesting.
That's what makes Russians. So with VSH, you get one trait, VSH. Mm-hmm. But with Russians, there's at least 10 traits. There's a few more, but there's 10 traits. Now, not every hive has all 10 traits. Because we have 18 lines, and not every line has all 10 traits. Some lines were better VSH, some lines were better groomers, but because we keep selecting and combining those lines, using some of the lines as drones, some of the lines as queens, and selecting for varroa resistance, the mite growth over time, we're selecting for all of those traits at the same time instead of selecting for one trait at a time. And so there's some variability in it, but they all have multiple traits.
Absolutely. I got you. Thank you. That's a good answer.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
Oh, I can have another one, if I may.
Okay.
So Stephen, you talked a little bit about temperament and with the bees, and I'm one of these guys. I had some backyard labeled Russian queens, 15 years ago, that were just hot as firecrackers. And is that something that, I understand that the more purebred ones, like the ones that you raise, are a lot better about that. Is that something that, I guess, is that a real thing, or what do y'all think about that? Is that something that y'all address as an organization, or?
Well, not really as an organization. 15 years ago, do you know where you got them? You know where you got them from?
Oh, it was a guy up west of here, but across the river in Oklahoma, and I remember he had and this is when I was starting out. Remember, he had a breeder queen. Oh, this nuke that he sold us, this is a Russian, or we grafted it off of this Russian queen, and
yeah. So early on would be 98, 99, 2000, 2002. Early
this was in
on,
probably like 01.
Yeah. So even if you bought, you could buy breeder queens from Charlie Harper or Steve Bernard. They were this is before the association was created. You could buy a breeder queen for $500. And this was a queen that was mated in isolation, either on an island or in a very isolated yard there in Louisiana. So you were pretty well assured that it was pure Russian. You couldn't get any better than that. But you take that home and then you graft off of it. And so if he grafted off that queen and what he sold you, while your queen would have been pure Russian, the worker bees were only 50% Russian.
Absolutely.
Yes. And early on, for sure, anytime you hybridize, there were some lines that when they hybridized, they got nasty. I don't remember what year that was. It was probably around 2000 or 2001. We had one yard that you had to stop the truck and you had to put your veil on 1/8 of a mile from the bee yard, and then pull up in the bee yard.
I feel your pain. Yeah.
Yes. And then that's probably the reason why they have the reputation of being aggressive, is because there are probably more queens sold by non-members than there are by members.
Mm-hmm.
Hardiman Apery sells a lot of queens. He sells good queens. He's a good producer from Georgia, but he's selling, it's not purebred Russian. He's not a member of the association, so I honestly don't know how good the quality is, but he sells 2 or 3 different lines of queens, and so he's not keeping them separate. You can't keep them separated unless you separate miles and miles. So yes, early on it was an issue.
So
But
y'all have kind of gotten, you've kind of, those lines are the F1 crosses these days are less likely to have those characteristics.
well, yeah, but once it hybridizes, who knows? I mean,
absolutely, I understand.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we're running 76 Russian hives. We picked up from you this year, and my experience with the Russians has been I went out and purchased a veil to work them because I just didn't need the suit for the yards, and it was hot. So they've been very, very well behaved to work with, and the handful of queens that we've had to requeen, you know, and they've gone hybridized. They've performed well. They've done well, and I've noticed no uptick in aggressiveness. So it's been a pleasant experience from our perspective on that issue.
Well, it's good to hear.
Yeah.
And they don't always get mean, but they can be, because, you know, who knows what's out there. And if you've got 70, if you have several Russian hives around there, you're just, you know, the best thing to do is have all your neighbors get Russians, you know, have everybody buy queens from me, so that when they do supersede or when they do swarm, they're mating with Russian drones.
All right, Justin, you heard it.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah. Yeah. No, and I'm not trying to pick on anything. I'm just, you know, I think that my past experiences, I mean, we're always tainted by our past experience.
Oh, yes.
And I want to try to move past that. And I think that Texas is broadly known as having, you know, some pretty hot bees out in the feral population, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's probably part of it too, you know.
Yeah. Well, and look, I see stuff all the time on Facebook, and I hear people tell me stories about how they got stung. You know, this one guy's like, "Oh, this hive just really, you know, tore me up." Well, how many times did you get stung? Well, I got stung 4 times. Okay, I mean, 4 times, that's not that big the deal. I mean, if you get stung 4 times in the same spot, yeah, it's going to hurt. But bees have stingers. They got stingers for a reason. You know, did you use a smoker? You should always wear a veil. You should always use a smoker. You know, you got to take the weather into account. And some people don't always understand that. They don't know that. So, I mean, there's a lot of variations, a lot of variables go into it. I mean, they're not the most calmest, gentlest bee out there, but they're the best surviving. They're the most varroa resistant. You know, they're good bees.
Sometimes it's not the bees, but it's the fact that the beekeeper isn't the calmest, gentlest thing out there.
Yeah. I'm rough and tumble and bumping, and, you know, I mean, when, you know, I'll be careful when I'm see the queen, or when I know you know, I don't try not to kill queens, but, you know, I got a job to do. I'm not a backyard beekeeper, so no, I can go open a hive. I can be a backyard beekeeper, and I can be slow and methodical, and that's enjoyable at times, but most of the time I need to be someplace else, so I got to hurry and get going. So
You got a job to do.
that's right.
Yeah.
But if you don't have Russians now, go over to Mike's and, you know, go through his and see how you like them.
Yeah, just
because they're not for everybody.
A little bit of time, you know, just go do it, right? Yeah.
You can go over to your brother's field next year and check them out.
Yeah.
I've had good reports from everybody that has Russian bees. So I think almost everybody that got them, you know, the last couple of years has been happy with them.
Well, that's good. That's good.
So, Stephen, what's the bright spots on your near horizon? What are you looking forward to with the Russian bees?
Oh, well, we need more members. We added 2 members last year. A guy from Arkansas and a guy from the Mississippi Delta. So that's good. You know, it takes a couple of years. It's a hard thing. It's an exclusive club. You got to have at least 200, a minimum of 200 all Russian colonies, and you got to be able to isolate to some degree, and you got to know how to graft, raise queen. You got to know how to raise queens. There's a difference between grafting and raising queens. You got to know how to raise queens. So,
I tell you, Stephen, in my experience, the grafting is the easiest part. It's getting the damn things mated is the hard part.
Yep, can be. I figure 65%. That's what I count on, 65%. So
that sounds about right too. Yeah.
If you graft 100 cells, you'll be lucky to get 50 queens out of it. Yep. So most of that stuff is beyond my control. I mean, I'm good, but I ain't that good. So. Yeah. So I don't know, Mike. There's, you know, we need some more members. So, you know, we're continuing to select and improve, but we had big plans this year in December. We were going to have a joint meeting with the Honey Producers Association over in Baton Rouge, but the COVID canceled all that. So we're planning on doing that next year. We're going to have a field day out at the bee lab, and, you know, show people what Russian bees look like and try to target someone who wants to be a breeder. Raising queens and being a breeder is two different things.
Well, exciting. Maybe some year for us.
Yep.
Okay.
All righty. Well, I see it's past my supper time. So I appreciate y'all inviting me to do this.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it too. It's been a pleasure.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. So,
thank you, Stephen. It was really enjoyed it. Very informative.
well, thank you. Thank you. Hopefully in the near future, we can do this kind of thing in person.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Like I said, if you got questions or whatever, you can email me, coybcompany.com. My email's on there. Email me, call me. I'll get back with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Stephen, you take care. We'll be in touch.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.